Data that is stored in your database tables is often not in the exact format needed by your applications. We will be using functions to help us get our data exactly how we want it. A function is something that will take input and process it in some way, and based on the input and what the function does, it will produce an output. So for us in our data, we will be using inputting data into the function that will produce the desired output. So again, functions are operations that, when performed on data, will manipulate or convert it in some way. Functions take one or more parameters as input. These parameters could represent the data and the ways to manipulate it, and then output is going to be returned. So for example, say we need to show a whole number in our application, but our data has decimal places. This function called round will round the number to the nearest digit you specify. It takes two parameters in the parenthesis following the function name. Each parameter is separated by a comma. In this function, the first parameter is the data to be manipulated, the 12.39, and then another parameter that specifies 0 decimal places. Then the result of the converted data using the round function would be 12. Be aware that the returning data from the function also has a data type and can be treated like any other data of that data type, whether it's a number, a string, a date, etc. Sometimes not only is the data manipulated and changed, but the data type might be as well. Different database management systems support different functions, so some functions are not portable across systems. Many of these same type of functions can also be performed later in the programming and development of the application that presents the data to the user. Some developers opt to manipulate or convert the data after it is queried and the data is out of the database and part of the output of the application. Then at that point, they will use a different programming language to run functions to convert or manipulate the data. This is an option, but it's a matter of realizing what's in the best interest of application performance. If the conversion is something the database could do more efficiently, you'll want to consider converting it as part of the database backend processing. If this is the choice you choose, then these functions will come in handy as you code your queries. We won't cover all the functions that are available, but some of the more common ones. String functions are among the most used functions. Strings refer to characters or text. Sometimes we want to format the strings or manipulate it or find parts of the string. String functions can help with that. For example, we might want to take column values from different tables and maybe 6 different attributes and combine them together, and in this case make them all uppercase while we're at it for something like mailing labels. Maybe we want to take a number and make it look more like currency with commas and dollar signs, so we can use functions to add those to the numbers. Maybe we want to know the length of different text. String functions can also allow us to find the length of text or how many characters are in that text. Or we can search for text or characters inside of other text. Let's look at concatenation, where we can combine values together by appending them to each other to form a single longer string value. For example, maybe we want to take the first and last name of our database and list them on a report. We can use the concat function with parameters being each value that we want to combine. The result of a concat will always be a string no matter what data is combined together. You could concatenate a string, a date, or an integer, but the result will always be a string. Or something like this. Here again, we have column names that are being used. We have a string value surrounded by quotation marks as the parameters. The first name value combined with a string in quotes of a space and then was born on another space, and then being combined with the DOB or date of birth value to give us Sue was born on and then the date. The upper and lower function will take any string and convert all the letters to uppercase or to lowercase. If we had last name of Jones, capital J and lowercase O-N-E-S, it would be converted to all uppercase with upper and all lowercase with lower. The length function will find the length in characters of any string. So if you need to find the length of a password value, for example, that was stored in a database, you could use the length function. If the password attribute had the value MYPW43 exclamation as the password, then it will return 7 characters long. The substring function will return part of a string from another string. For example, say you just need the first 3 numbers of the last 4 digits of a Social Security number. So with this Social Security number, the last 4 digits are 1, 2, 3, 4, and you want just the 1, 2, 3 of that 1, 2, 3, 4. You could use the substring function with 3 parameters. First parameter, the string to be searched, then the starting position, 8, and then the length of characters returned, 3. So we start at the 8th character, and that includes the dashes as characters, and then we're going to return 3 characters in length to give us the 1, 2, 3. Numeric functions operate over a single value and return a single value. Don't confuse these functions with aggregate functions that will take a whole set of values and perform a calculation. These are just taking one single value as the parameter. For example, again, the round function will round a number to the nearest whole number. The ceiling function will round the next highest whole number regardless of decimal amount. So 12.2 becomes 13. The floor function will get the next lower whole number regardless of decimal amount. So 12.8 would still become 12. The abs function gets the absolute value of the number, and the square root function will get the square root of the number. The date functions and time functions are implemented differently by different database management vendors, so you might see other ways to do similar things depending on what system you're using. Here are just some common date functions. If you had a date of December 20th, 1999, and it was stored in the DOB or date of birth attribute as a value, you could use the year function with that DOB as the parameter. It would return only the 4-digit year from that entire date. Similarly, month and day will extract the 2-digit month code and the number of the day. The now function returns the current local date and time from your system's clock. You could return a date plus a specific interval such as months, years, or in this case days with the date add function. A date would be returned that is 30 days past the invoice date with this function. You can use date diff function that takes 2 dates as parameters. It returns the difference in days between those 2 dates. In our case, it's today's date and a date of birth value. Again, this will return in numbers of days. If you wanted the difference in years, you could then divide it by 365. Since the only way for a database to recognize a date is with the format for year, dash month, dash day, it's nice to be able to format the date in different ways. The date format function returns a formatted string from a date value. With the date format, there are 2 parameters, the date you're formatting and then the format string, which contains codes used for how you want the date to be formatted. There are quite a few different codes that you can include in this format string, but we're only going to be using a few here. So again, if you had the DOB or date of birth as December 20th, 1999, then date format with the parameters of the date as the first parameter, and then the second parameter of how you want it formatted. In this case, the month name is represented as %, capital M. The 2-digit day of the month is represented by %, lowercase d, and the 4-digit year presented as %, uppercase Y. Then you would get the following formatted string returned. There are many other functions that we didn't cover. We just saw some of the more common ones, but remember, it's all about give and take. Functions receive parameters based on data types and return results based on data types. Raw data input being processed in the function and becoming the output that we need. Also, remember there's two general types of functions. The ones that we just covered are referred to as scalar functions, which operate on individual values or rows one at a time. There are also aggregate functions that operate on sets of rows or whole tables of rows at a time, and we will cover those in a different lesson.